Hi everyone, this is Norman Kochnick here yes, I'm still around in Sydney, Australia. Had a couple of weeks where I haven't been on air, which a bit of a break, but I've certainly been posting a lot of recorded videos and community post updates. If you would have been watching that, you'd see that. There's certainly been a recorded video. There's been a lot to do with a hell of a lot to do with the cricket at the moment. I mean, this particular live show today, which I'm hoping to get people like David Graveney on. David should be on. He's certainly has a lot of involvement with the England setup. Still a structure of England. Hello there, Amit. Sure. So how are you? It has a lot to do with David Graveney. Obviously, a lot to do with Adam Hollioake. Was basically given the job of coaching England when Chris Silverwood was out with COVID there for a while, but he didn't get the chance to do that. Obviously, he's in the mix. He was fully aware. Monty Panesar's been quite vocal about things as well. The truth is that there's been significant changes, which we'll go through very shortly. We'll go through it very. It's one of those. Good evening, Paul Newman. I can see you there. It's one of those things that you want to get clear now. As the video suggested in its headlines, the England camp's gone through substantial changes, a form of clean-out, you might argue. Obviously, England were really down their luck, they're down their mood, the momentum that they normally provide was not there, even though with Ben Stokes back, having gone through what he's gone through. A lot of structural issues with England cricket, obviously with the emphasis on the 100 and their CEO's persistence on the 100. Mind you, they lost their managing director, Ashley Giles, a former England spinner, in the mix. He was one of the very first people to actually depart post the Ashes drama. In fact, there's quite a few. Ashley Giles, the managing director of England cricket, he went first. Then relatively closely followed by Chris Silverwood, the actual head coach and head selector for that matter, which was never going to work, and it proved to be exactly that. So they lost Ashley Giles as managing director, they lost Chris Silverwood as the head coach. They then lost Graham Thorpe as the assistant coach, predominantly the batting coach. So three of the mainstays in the support staff, the coaching staff, have departed from England cricket. And that was quite a substantial blow to England. When I say blow, it's more. It was probably a necessitation there, a need to have it happen. And it was good that it did happen and quite promptly. That also saw, in fact, today only a matter of, I think it was only a matter of an hour or so ago, Paul Collingwood has been selected as the interim head coach for the England tour of the West Indies. The 3 tests happening there in March. So that's going to be a way forward. Paul Collingwood was very excited about it and looks towards the future. They haven't really discussed what they're going to do in regards to a selection panel, whether they're going to continue with that. I doubt they will. Ashley Giles has gone, he headed that up. I'm pretty sure they're going to go back to a form of chief selector or chairman of selectors of England cricket. I'm sure they'll go back to that and they'll have various people assisting that selection role and not leave it in the coach's hands, which is more the traditional way of handling. Who do you predict, Paul Neal was who do you predict will be the next Australian head coach? Now, that's the next. So I've talked about England there. That one saga is England there and the way they've lost, as I said, Ashley Giles, managing director. They've lost Chris Silverwood, the coach, head selector, and they've lost Graham Thorpe, with the interim coach being Paul Collingwood. In Australia's case, of course, the bombshell. Was it a bombshell? They had some 8-hour discussion, Cricket Australia, with Justin Langer, and Justin Langer was offered a 6-month extension to beyond the World Cup, giving an opportunity to defend the World Cup, which they won last year. And that was not good enough for Justin Langer. He then saw that as an insult and very promptly resigned immediately, effective immediately, leaving a hole there for a head coach. Obviously, because of that, Justin Langer's departure, Andrew Mcdonald, who was the assistant coach, who pretty much was in the coaching role anyway throughout the period of probably a major part of the Ashes and the World Cup, as we'll find out more and we'll discuss more, is the way that Ashley Giles actually. Sorry, no, she's not. David Graben. Hello, David.
Norman.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm fine.
Wow, hasn't there been a so-called Ashes aftermath?
I think there's been an aftermath in world cricket, basically. So.
Oh, for sure. So I just briefly discussed about what's come out. Obviously, the first to go, Ashley Giles as managing director. Then you had obviously Chris Silverwood as coach, and then Graham Thorpe as assistant coach, all going very, very quickly.
Yeah,
what's your take on
that? Yeah, they were trying to, I don't know, react to the media or whatever. So this, I don't think it came as a great surprise. I saw Ashley before he went to Australia, and he was a little bit down in the dumps, I think. So, but the Langer one seems very interesting to me, because he is actually, people have got really short memories of where Australian cricket was after the ball tampering and whatever. The country had turned against the cricket team, which in Australia is a huge thing. And then for them to win the T20 and then to win the Ashes, so there must be something going on in terms of. He did describe himself as he's a very intense guy. This is what I've heard from when he was involved with Somerset. He did a really good job there, but he's. I think you need to be on the same page as him as an individual. But it seemed a bit of a shock in terms of what he'd been doing. So has he fallen out with a hierarchy, or?
Well, I think he did some stage throughout last year. They had the full review of his position, like a heart-to-heart with the players, and there's a lot of open discussion. And clearly, they told Justin Langer to pare back his aggressive, winner-take-all attitude to his coaching, and that actually worked because Andrew Mcdonald came to the fore with his more balanced coaching style, and that led them to do very well in the World Cup and the Ashes, although Langer was obviously still the head coach. I think that was evident, and there was always only one question on it, was how long Justin Langer would coach for. And really, even though he left promptly and abruptly after the discussion, it was never going to be that he was going to be continued on with, although they did give him a lifeline to go to the World Cup of this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't like that. He was insulted by that. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of discussion, as you probably heard, from Matthew Hayden, Ricky Ponting, Michael Clark, even Mitchell Johnson coming out and bagging Pat Cummins. I'm a bit shocked about that. I'm normally not a huge Cricket Australia fan, but I think that Justin Langer has to have a good hard look at his coaching style. And even though he had 4 years there, he can't expect to coach forever. And Australia has moved on.
If you compare his style to Trevor Bayliss, for instance, Trevor Bayliss didn't say anything virtually. He just let
David, could you excuse me, David? You need to speak up, or your mic's a little bit weak.
Right. Okay. I will speak up louder. How's that? Can you hear that, Norman?
Yes, I can hear that better. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So he needs to. It's just there seems to be sort of two positions. You either do it like a sergeant major, which is Justin Langer, or you do it in a Chris Silverwood, where you want to be. It's just a softer way of doing it. I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but they're just two ways of doing it. And what it seems to me is that player power within the dressing room is much stronger now than it used to be.
Yes.
Either way, either it's too strong or it's too weak or whatever. And that certainly wasn't the case in previous years or eras. But there are lots of things that are happening now, Norman, that didn't happen 20 years ago. So if it's in terms of upsetting your employees is as a way to lose your job, well, that just wouldn't happen. That when I first started to play, albeit at county level, it was you would do it this way or go and find another job because we'll find somebody else to do your job. And it seems to be a bit more softer around the edges. And if somebody wants to do that, then the players get really upset about it. Well, I'm afraid that's the way of the world, isn't it? In any other walk of life, if you don't do your job, somebody else will replace you. So
it's interesting, David. If I take a step back, I mean, we can talk more about England and their situation in a minute. I'm very happy about Paul Collingwood. I think he's got the right stuff to be the coach. I think very strongly. I want to also talk about whether they're going to change the selection style. Are they going to have a chief selector or a chairman of selectors again? They're going to go back to that now that Ashley Giles is gone. But with Australia, let's take it back around about, well, maybe you could go close to 12 months. You had Steve Smith coming out in the Australian press saying that he pledges to be the next captain. It was Ben Horn, one of our journalists here, wrote that. But very quickly after, they went and interviewed Justin Langer, and Justin Langer said, "What, Steve Smith captain? No, Tim Payne's the captain, and that's it," which would have been a slap in the face of Steve Smith, who came out in the press and basically was alluding to the fact that he's going to be the next captain, when Justin Langer, the coach, said, "No, Tim Payne's the captain." And there was clearly a dissension between Langer and even Tim Payne as a coach-captain grouping, and the likes of Steve Smith, ultimately Dave Warner, and a number of other players. They seem to be already fragmenting themselves prior to the Ashes. And there was a lot of concern about Justin Langer's coaching.
One of the things, Norman, I would have to say is that I think if you go down the route of one of these fly-on-the-wall documentaries, you are shooting yourself in the foot. Because you will be revealing stuff that shouldn't come out in the public domain. And Jose Mourinho did one at Spurs, and that he lost his job soon after that. Because if you're doing something like that, you've got to reveal things that the players won't like, and that certainly happened in that documentary. And it's in the public domain. It's like me saying, chairman selectors, we will film every selection meeting, and it's for public consumption. Well, that just wouldn't work. So, they might have got some money from it, but it's come at high costs. What stays in the dressing room has to stay in the dressing room. They can't let it come out in the public domain.
Exactly. So, on the basis of that, Justin Langer obviously pared back his coaching style after the advice he had. It led to Andrew Mcdonald taking more responsibility. It ended up being the players taking more responsibility, and it worked with a slightly different group of the World Cup under Aaron Finch, who I believe is a very good captain. And then Pat Cummins had an England team that, quite frankly, were a lot easier to beat than the fact that Australia played well. I don't think, in all honesty, that Australia played so well that England were beaten. It was more that England didn't play that well, and Australia were allowed to come to the fore. So we've lost David. I'm sure David will come back on in a minute. But the reality is that here's David now. Let's hear him back on. David?
Yep.
Great.
I can hear you, so that's fine.
That's great. So I was just saying that the way that Aaron Finch captained the World Cup, he is a very good captain. His form may be in and out on occasions, but he is a very, very good captain. I still would have liked him to have been the Test captain, but so be it.
Yeah, technically he's always going to be in and out, Norman. He's devastating when he's playing really well, but I think people have realised that he can actually get him out LBW because he hits across his front pads. But I agree with you. I think he's and I don't know what it's like to be in the dressing room. I only listen to the way that they speak, and I think he speaks really well, as does Pat Cummins speak really well. I just think there is I can't remember a team where I'm old-fashioned in many ways, Norman. One by age and outlook, is that I think that you've got to have a captain who runs the team. It's a little bit. I can remember listening to Richie Bennett talking about his relationships with Don Bradman. And he had to clarify, actually, I'm the captain and I want the 10 people that I want to come out onto the pitch. We'll talk about it. and I'm happy to listen to your views. But in the end, it's me, because I'm the one who will take the rap. And most normal relationships seem to work that way. I can't see with Alan Border, Steve Waugh, Mark Taylor, the convener or whatever the chairman selectors, overruling the captain in those three instances, because they ran the dressing room. You know, they were great players, but great leaders and men. And that's the relationship you want. You want somebody on the outside looking in, and it becomes an easier thing to do if you win more than you lose, which has happened the case in all three of those captains. Problem with England is when they lose big time. So they like a bit of human sacrifice. So and there is a limit, I think, that, you know, everybody's a human being, and it certainly happened to me and my family. There is a limit to how much flack an individual can take and how it overflows into with your children, your wife. You know, it's just no fun, you know, and it doesn't matter how much money you get, you still got to have a quality of life. And, you know, if it begins to affect your for me, I didn't mind all the flack coming in my direction. That was part of the job. But when it went into other people, then that you draw the line then. So,
but don't you think it's interesting how
both Silverwood and Ashley Giles, there was a tipping point, and that was it.
Yep, agree totally. I mean, you are very. I mean, I'm not expecting you to tell me everything that you're hearing, because I'm sure you're hearing some things that haven't yet been brought out. I'm sure you're privy to information or discussions which haven't panned out. But I mean, the way that the England under-19 team did in the World Cup final was magnificent. They did lose, but they put up a great fight to get to that place. They've got a lot of talent in that squad, which I'm sure you've already recognised. There's a lot of.
To be fair, as did Australia. You know, they played really well. Their preparation, like all the countries, are impacted by COVID, but nobody complained about that. India have had no domestic cricket for 2 years. Ranji Trophy just hasn't taken place, so that's impacted on their competitions. And I thought England did really well. They showed a lot of character. They played together as a team. We lost our best bowler before the tournament started in terms of seam bowling, but what it did show is that Indian cricket is not based on spin alone. They had some really good seamers who probably hit the deck harder than any other bowlers in the tournament.
That was the most impressive part about the Indian team, was their bowling, certainly.
Yeah, but pace bowling, you know, and
yes.
I think that, we talked about Indian cricket senior team, and that I see that as a point of difference for them. They now have a battery of seamers that if anybody wants to take them on the seaming wicket, then carry on. We'll fight fire with fire.
Impressive. They're thinking about their cricket. They know where they were failing or they were lacking, and they've really spent time on getting that up to speed. Not only their batting and their general fielding, that's their bowling. And certainly they've played emphasis on that in the junior ranks, and it's showing.
Yeah, and to engage Troy Cooley is an inspired move, really.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's for Troy to uproot and then go to India, and you know he's been sending lots of stuff on social media when he was in lockdown, but they only need a little bit of time with him. You know, you need a combination of running an academy. You've got Troy Cooley looking after the bowlers and VVS Laxman looking after the batters. All you need, and there'll be plenty of spin bowling coaches, and there'll be plenty of other coaches that they have. They have resources, but they are very good at targeting the people who would make a point of difference. And Troy Cooley is an exceptional fast bowling coach. He always thought that England made life far too complicated. So bowling's quite simple. Just look at DK Lilly. You can't have a more pure action than that. And VVS Laxman, well, he would be in my top 4 or 5 players. I certainly played the innings of a century, really. And the 100 that he got against Australia was the most extraordinary innings. So, but he also is a very personal bloke and disciplined. It was very interesting at the end of the match that the Indian manager pulled the players back from the boundary as they were sort of preparing to run onto the pitch, because there were some pretty ugly incidents the last World Cup with Bangladesh and India. they do a really good, disciplined job. And I spoke to Richard Dawson, the coach, who did a fantastic job with England. And he said he only didn't see many of the teams, but he saw the Australians. They were always very polite, very well presented. So I think the message is getting through. If you want to play international cricket, you have to behave on and off the pitch. And I thought the conduct of the matches all the way through were pretty good, I would have to say. And emerging countries like Afghanistan have got some serious bowlers. One of the guys.
I mean, there's semi-finals, for God's sake.
Yeah, but two of their blokes played in the Big Bash. I know that Rashid Khan would have got them involved, but it's brilliant, an emerging country. And I think we have to remember the backdrop that they're coming from in their country is extraordinary for them even to get on a cricket pitch, in my mind.
So just to step back now, with Paul Collingwood as the interim coach, there was even some discussion in the last few days about Justin Langer coming to coach England. I seriously doubt that. I can't imagine.
Well, he is like, it's a bit what they say about Blackpool Rock, Norman. If you cut it in half and have Blackpool in the middle, I think it has to be, not to say you can't have an Australian coach, but I think it's a really big step for somebody as passionate. Don't mind, I'm sure they wouldn't mind coaching in county cricket as such, which they have done. But I in a perfect world, I would have said that Ricky Ponting was the guy. But he. This is why I think it lends itself to, in my mind, to have a red ball coach and a white ball coach.
I agree.
I think if with a white ball, you can attract somebody like a Ricky Ponting if he wanted to do it. But I think it's such a big leap for a leading Australian player to become coach of England. It's I'm not saying it's a bit like India and Pakistan, but it's getting pretty close to it. So.
Now there's somebody called Hockey Wiz who's made a comment about the Australian cricket team is back to the time before Langer came into play, saying there's the whole aspect of sandpaper getting the cheating that went on. We seem to retrograde, step back to there. I don't think that's the case. I think we've moved on from there. But I think Australian cricket now, with Pat Cummins, has got a clean skin captain, meaning someone who's going to be admirable in the way he approaches things. He'll gain more strength. I'm disappointed that Steve Smith was vice captain. I don't think they should have given it to him. But anyway, I think that we've got
that sense at Norman. That sends a mixed message. Like you will get it back again a bit farther down the road. If anything happens to Pat Cummins, you'll be coach of Australia. And I agree with you that where Australian cricket was, and as a result of those actions, which are regrettable, everybody's apologised and whatever, but it turned the public against Australian cricket, which I've never seen that happen.
Exactly.
And there has to be a consequence for that.
Well, it's going to stay that way until both Steve Smith and Dave Warner eventually leave the game, I'm afraid. They're both not going to be able to play that down. Admittedly, Steve Smith has become vice captain, yes, but that's going to linger until those two players are no longer playing for Australia. It's as simple as that. Australia's not going to forget that, even though they're good players in their own right. Now, another thing. Okay, so the discussion around the future Australian coach is back to Trevor Bayliss. He certainly is in the frame. Obviously, Andrew Mcdonald is also in the frame. He's the interim coach. I get a feeling they may consider him as a safe bet at the moment. It certainly won't be Ricky Ponting. If you listen to his comments the last few days, he's been absolutely caning Cricket Australia.
So who are you suggesting it is? Mcdonald?
Well, Andrew McDonald's the assistant coach now. He's become the interim coach for the both the
it's a bit like
Sri Lankan series and Pakistan. Sorry, the Pakistan series.
Somebody who knows the setup. And in the limited time that Andrew McDonald was in the UK, he did an outstanding job. I know it was his county cricket, but I had the privilege to meet him on a couple of occasions, and he's got a presence. There's no doubt about that.
He's well liked by the team, and in fact, through Justin Langer's so-called rants and raves and carry on, apparently a lot of the players went to Andrew Mcdonald for a more, balanced
view.
question, and that only fed the energy towards Andrew even more. So, he's likely to be is the interim coach, and you have to argue if you kept on as the interim coach, you're well liked by Cricket Australia, and they would probably have eyes on keeping him. But I think Trevor Bayliss is the only other option. He's never coached Australia, and I think that would be an intriguing development because he's obviously coached England and Sri Lanka, and I wouldn't mind seeing him having the Australian jersey as his coach. Okay, so that's pretty much Australia. We're moving into a World Cup this year, of course, here in Australia, and we're going to Pakistan. And most of the comments I've just seen now is talked a lot about the Pakistan series. There's murmurings that one or two of the Australian players who will be picked will actually opt out. We're not hearing who they are yet, but there may be one or two players that are erring on not going to Pakistan, which
their decision, Norman, or the decision of the board. Their decision or the decision of the board. So it's their choice to pull out.
Their choice to pull out.
Right.
So we're not hearing who the names are yet, but there's one to two that look like it because the Australian Players Association has been murmuring about that, and I think it's very frustrating because to me, I want this Pakistan series to go ahead with our best team because we're going to be tested there. It's going to be a very hard series. It'll be an eye opener. We've got Sri Lanka coming here in the next few weeks. Well, they're here now, which will be, I'm not sure how
is that
hard that
white
series.
ball cricket?
Yeah, it's not a test match.
All right, because I think there was a rumor that the under-19 captain, who was one of the better players in the tournament,
right,
got left arm spin and batted. He's included in that squad, I think. So
interesting. It's exciting to see these young blokes come through. But what I don't want a country like India to do is they've got so many players knocking on the door for their top side now. They've got to settle on their top side. I think it's important for a lot of countries now to encourage the young players to come through, but don't just rush them in. They've got to give an element of transition. And I want to see a team like India, who has done exceptionally well, to start to settle their team down a bit because the team that played against South Africa was not their best side.
No, and even looking at the side, I know the West Indies aren't the strongest team in the world, but if you looked at the batting lineup, and it might be my ignorance of not knowing the people involved, it just didn't look a very strong batting team. On, if you get a couple of people out at the top, then you can cause some issues. Really, Pant's really exciting, but he can't bat 5. That's ridiculous.
Well, having Virat Kohli,
he might do that in a 2020 game, but he's not going to do that in a 50-over game. So, yeah.
Anyway, I think India. Look, if they settle their team structures down, which I'm sure they're going to do, I think the days of Pujara and Rahane must be close to finishing if they haven't already. And they start to blood the right young players like Shreyas Iyer and the like. They'll be a team to be reckoned with. And Kohli, who knows what's going on with him? He's lost all captaincies. He's still playing. I wonder if he's got to start to get runs now as well.
I think if I'm only looking at the captains that I worked with, the moment there was that they were reduced the ranks, they went down to private as opposed to be commander in chief. The desire changed. I'm sure they tried as hard as they did before, but there's something about being captain, and it's difficult. It's a really difficult act. If you sit in the dressing room and do I say too much? If I don't say anything, people will think I'm sulking. It's a really difficult gig. And look at the Australian captains. Taylor, Border, War, they didn't play after they lost their captaincy. Well, not that I remember. They might play the odd game. So, and Alistair Cook is actually, to his credit, he's played county cricket and he enjoys playing county cricket. So
good on
if England collapse at the speed that they go, he has to keep fending off, will you come back and save England? But he's doing it because he wants to save his county more than anything else. So
that's great. That's very admirable.
Yeah.
So Joe Root's under no threat of losing his captaincy at this point. No.
It doesn't matter what Jeffrey Boycott. He's suddenly very noticeable in all these really sad events around Yorkshire that Jeffrey Boycott has not made a quote about anything really. So
So
I think people need to support Joe Root. You know, the
absolutely.
captaincy is an interesting thing. You get the praise when you win, and it's your fault when you lose. It's a bit like being a selector, really. So, and he can only do what he can do, and he has scored, you know, masses of runs under extreme pressure. You know, he keeps saying, "I want to bat 4 rather than 3." What I'd have to say, it's really academic, Joe, because you're normally in within about 20 minutes anyway. So.
Well, just on another note, on the World Cup, back to that for October, November. My God, we've already got stadiums sold out for the India-Pakistan match. They're really into that already. What's intriguing is on the 21st of this month, which is only, 2 weeks away, we're going to open up borders altogether. We're allowing tourism back.
I see that in the press today.
Full throttle.
So you'll have big crowds. So Norman, are you still doing this every day, or you do it just?
Well, I had a couple of weeks where I just was away from it. I'm back now on every day. Hopefully from now on, yes.
Well,
so I had a few weeks where I didn't do any live. I did a few uploads, but not live.
Yeah, I've got to go out in a minute. So, but just keep sending me the link, and I'll join.
We can talk about this topic's not over yet. It's a long way from complete.
All right, okay.
So we can talk about this in future episodes. For sure.
No, we can. Let me just see how the cards are falling in the UK, and we'll have a bit more to talk about.
Absolutely.
But I will also talk about the under-19s, if that's okay.
Please do.
Names for people to watch, really, more than anything else.
Let's dissect those names in future discussions. Absolutely, David. I want you on as much as you wish to come on.
All right. Cheers, Norman. Take care.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look, amazing, guys, to have David Graveney, the chairman of selectors for a number of years, who's on the pulse of what's happening in English cricket, and not just English cricket. He's right on top of world cricket, and in particular the under-19 structures and how young players are coming through. He's let a good, long, hard look at the way England are playing and other countries like Australia, Pakistan, India, and how they're progressing in Afghanistan. So we're going to get some very insightful discussions with him later. So a lot of questions. I've got Baram Irani talking his head off there. Some discussion with Michael Vaughan in his predictions. But Michael Vaughan's, I don't want to call him a joker, but he does like to stir the pot more than not. So let's not worry about his comments. But I'm particularly disappointed with the way the Australian press is carrying on at the moment. A few of the leading writers, Malcolm Conn, for example, has written some stuff that really makes me scratch my head. Very, very provocative, very sensationalising certain things which probably don't deserve to be. Look, Justin Langer's departure was always on the cards. This whole discussion about him being disgusted and being badly treated and the players revolting when they shouldn't and blah, blah, blah. Look, it's a lot of fluff, really. Justin Langer had coached for 4 or 5 years. He did a pretty good job in most of the cases. It became a very difficult circumstance when Darren Lehman left and the sandpaper gate issue. He had to resurrect the Australian team with Tim Payne. It took a while, but he got that job done. He was pretty hard with his coaching style. Maybe something like that. In particular, the Steve Smith and Dave Warners, who probably deserved it. And they really didn't like him clearly, because the way that Tim Payne went and Justin Langer, I'm sure there are a couple of players in that team that are rejoicing at the moment. But they should never count your chickens, because in fact they've got some of the players, the majority of the players have got exactly what they wanted. Let's see how they prove their worth now, because they've got rid of the captain and the coach in part, if not full, and they're now leaving themselves with a situation that they're going to perform. They certainly did perform during the World Cup, and that was Aaron Finch as captain, and the players with Andrew Mcdonald that came to the fore there, which was a slightly different makeup of team than what played in the Ashes. The Ashes, to me, I still maintain that England were not really all there. They weren't at their best. They weren't correctly structured. They didn't have a proper selection panel. Some of their players were very, very jaded. They played well below their best. In Australia, I still believe to this day were made look better than they were. I think there's a lot of holes in the Australian team, even though they won the Ashes quite convincingly. It was on home soil. I mean, Scott Boland bowled well, yes. Even Mitchell Stark had a pretty good series. But the batting was fair to middling. Usman Khawaja, who only came in towards the end of the Test series, which was a bit of a Justin Langer hangover by leaving him out, did well. Travis Head did pretty well. Those two were the major players. Warner failed quite consistently. Steve Smith didn't have a great series. Labuschagne had a fair series. They were the top three that we normally would expect to get the runs. They didn't do well at all. Usman Khawaja certainly stopped this because he deserved everything he got there. That was a magnificent effort by him, and Travis Head did well as well. Baram Marani, how are you?
I'm fine. How about you?
Did you hear David clearly? Was David's volume clear when David was speaking?
Yeah, it was clear. A little low, but yeah.
Okay, clear. I can't tell sometimes from when I'm talking. But look, Baram, this has been the whole Justin Langer saga really is not a shock that he's no longer coaching, because quite frankly, they were talking about that for most of last year. Okay, they won the World Cup. Yes, they won the Ashes. But it didn't change the way in which they were being coached, other than Andrew Mcdonald. It was, I think I spoke about it, didn't I, for a lot of time, Baram, that he wasn't going to continue. So it's not really a shock as such.
Well, I would put it in such a way that, see, in the end, what is the outcome that you want from a coach and a team? That they win trophies, right? And you got the World Cup trophy, T20 trophy, which Australia had never won ever. They had never won a T20 World Cup. And I think this was Justin Langer's first T20 World Cup, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So look at his pedigree, or look at his trophy shelf. He plays the first T20 World Cup as a coach, which Australia has never won, and he gets that trophy for Australia. Now, okay, we can talk about the UAE and there was luck involved and that all, but in the end, it's a win. So you cannot doubt that fact.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, number two is winning the Ashes convincingly. Now you may again argue that the England team was not good, and that that's all I would say. How can you say that this England team was that bad that Australia defeated them 4.9-0?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So looking at the results point of view, I would say, like if I was a let's say a Indian fan, I would love to have Justin Langer as a coach, because that's what India is missing, is getting the big trophies. So, and that's in the end what you want. Like 10 years down the line, no one will remember like what bilateral. Like let's say if India wins this ODI bilateral between West Indies, 2 years, 3 years from now, nobody even remember that. Like it will be forgotten. But 50 years from now, everybody would remember that in 2021, Australia won the T20 World Cup.
No, and that's
Justin
true.
Langer was the coach. So, given the, I don't know, was the man management so bad, or was the thing so bad that they had to remove him after showing such successful results? Is I would say very difficult to digest, Norman. Like that would be my viewpoint of put it. Very difficult to digest.
Okay, look, I on the surface, I totally agree with you. They won the World Cup. They won the Ashes. Langer can hold his head up high. They gave him an extension, offered him an extension until the end of the next World Cup, right? And he opted that not to be long enough. But realistically, a coach that's been in place for 4 or 5 years can't expect to go on for another 4 or 5 years. It's not like he's got a lifetime role as coach. Let's be honest. It's a rather, a big ask to expect to be coaching.
No, I agree with that. No, I agree with that with you, Norman. But I would then expect that, given his performance, he would be at least there till the 2023 World Cup. The T20 World Cup, upcoming T20 World Cup, and also the next ODI World Cup that would be held in India.
Yeah, but look, how long is a piece of string, though, Baram? That Australia, his contract was under review in May. It was meant to be, May was the D-Day, right? May. Okay. Now, and he was offered to go until November. Okay. Now, look, I understand that he may have wanted a longer contract. Okay. But he's coaching Australia. It's not like he's coaching his kids' team. It has to be reasonably fair. I didn't like the way Justin Langer did a lot of things through the
Norman,
year.
to the Indian fans or like the larger community, can you say what exactly was the like? What were all the players against him, or was there a specific group of players who were against
Yeah,
him? Can you say what? Like honestly, not many people know exactly what.
Okay.
Or nobody
It
actually
played out
knows.
in the press. It played out in the press.
Okay.
Look, when you Justin Langer, for example, was on a ball by ball, blow by blow, warts and all view of what happens in the dressing room on a special for Amazon, whatever it is, Amazon Plus. They went warts and all, and you saw Langer blow up, throw things around, get aggressive, get angry, be very intense, and some players didn't like that. That's one thing. Okay. So his intensity was probably a bit too much for some players, yes. But it was the fact that he came in when Smith and Warner were out of the side because of the sandpaper grate, right? And Tim Payne come in. They came in and Smith and Warner on the nose, right? And Langer, and to a lesser extent, but still was there, Payne led the charge on wanting to change things, which was a slap in the face of Smith and Warner, okay? Smith and Warner have a little solid power base going on, clearly, okay? And even though the sandpaper gate was against them, they wanted to come back, right? And they had records to show that they were worthy of coming back. As I said earlier last year, Steve Smith rounded up Ben Horn, who was a media guy here in Sydney, and got him to do I'm at the park with the kids, I'm pledging to be the next Australian captain, blah, blah, blah. The Australian public hated it, right? It was a trumped up piece of rubbish, quite frankly.
Okay.
And to Justin Langer's credit, he said, what? Steve Smith pledging to be captain? Hang on a minute. We've got Tim Payne. He basically dismissed what Smith had said, which would have angered Steve Smith, no doubt. Okay. Warner, who was never going to captain again, is ticked off because he thinks he should, right? Now, he's been officially told he's never going to captain, right? But he can still cause a lot of problems. Don't forget.
Okay.
So Langer's coaching style was there was a door open for the players to jump on him, okay? And they did. And it got to the point where the World Cup was looming and Australia was a mess. When they played in the West Indies against Bangladesh, they were losing matches. Players were in and out. It was a mess, right? Langer was told in no uncertain times, either back off or you're sacked, right? And he did. He listened, give him credit. He listened and he backed off. Andrew Mcdonald, who was the quieter, more backroom, quiet guy, took more in charge because players liked him, okay?
Okay.
So effectively for the World Cup, even though Langer was so-called in charge, he really wasn't. He really wasn't. He backed off and let Andrew Mcdonald have a more placative, quieter style, and it actually worked. And they were different players to the test team. Stoinis, even Wade, Aaron Finch, the spinner. They had a number of players that weren't test players. So it was a different group somewhat, right? And Steve Smith was not in the leadership group at all, nor was Warner. And they actually played better, okay? And they won the World Cup. It shocked all of us. It shocked Australia too. We didn't expect to win the World Cup. Then the Ashes series, okay, England, again, Josh Langer was told to back off, and he did. He was a lot less forceful. And anyway, it played into the series' hands. England weren't playing well. Pat Cummins came in. That was another issue. The timing of Tim Payne's departure was not Justin Langer's idea, okay? It was, again, the Smith-Warner camp, as well as the timing of the sexting thing, which happened years ago, shows you something was smelling, all right? Anyway, Pat Cummins came in. Steve Smith was happy because he's vice captain. He could basically pull the puppet strings on Pat Cummins and still be captain, right? And even captain in Pat Cummins' absence. Dave Warner was at first slip, and you see him placing the field like a vice captain or captain, even though he wasn't captain. You could watch the game live, you saw Steve Smith and Warner dictating terms what was going on. And Pat Cummins slowly did more, but he was really, what do you think, David? What do you think, Steve? So that's a clear indication there was something, with those two. All right. Anyway.
And even even the comments, I think some people were saying that there was some Pat Cummins also does not like Langer, or he does not want Langer as a coach. Is that also true?
Well, Pat Cummins is a very nice guy, okay? And he won't ruffle any feathers. And he would have sided with Cricket Australia's side. So he took a very neutral, what they call, Mitchell Johnson said, that it was a very gutless approach where he was towing the line with Cricket Australia. Let's not forget, we're forgetting one thing here, and that's money. Money. Pat Cummins is he's the highest paid Australian player at the moment, right? From all of his playing. Steve Smith is up there, Warner's up there. These guys are worth 20, 30, 40 million dollars. And it's affecting a lot of things. I'm telling you now. All right?
Okay.
So that's Pat Cummins, they call him gutless. At least Mitchell Johnson said, not to defend his captain.
So in my view, Norman, I would say that given the performance of Australian team and this view, I think the Australian team is better off without a coach.
I kind of agree. Well, they need a coach.
This is a analysis or the outcome. I would say that Australian team would perform better without a coach. Maybe just have a namesake kind of, just for the formalities. But
they probably need a coach which takes a back seat, is what you're saying. They need a coach that steers more than controls. And yeah, I kind of agree. I think if you look at Australian coaches over the years, they have been rather low key. Now they're saying that Andrew McDonald's probably in the best seat at the moment to continue being coach, at least interim coach. But I think what Nick Hockley said, which is pretty clear, they're going to do things on a project basis, step-by-step basis, which means you might have a coach for a tour, which tells me Andrew McDonald will do a fair bit of it, and I reckon they're going to bring someone else in, and I think that's going to be Trevor Bayliss.
Something like what Pakistan is doing right now.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It won't be Ricky Ponting, because Ricky Ponting has just exploded the last few days about how bad Cricket Australia is. Little hope of him being the next coach if he's bagging Cricket Australia. I'll tell you that now. Anyway.
What about Glenn Mcgrath? He's not into coaching?
No. He'd be the last person to be coached. Really, it's Jason Gillespie, Trevor Bayliss that are two, and Andrew McDonald are the three front runners for the coaching role, I would say. One of those three will probably get it. But it's funny, isn't it? Australia have just won the World Cup and just won the Ashes, but their coach is gone. Funny, isn't it?
After the Ashes, everybody went home.
Well, England's structure had to change.
So
Silverwood was not able to do both captain and selector. Graham Thorpe went probably because of Silverwood's connection. And Ashley Giles stuffed it by not having a selection panel.
Yeah, because on that, I would really say they were highly misreading the pitch or the situation. Like in the team selection, given the situation of the pitch or the situation of the match was completely off. It was how can you say, rookie kind of a mistake, which found where they should have played Anderson, they did not play him, and vice versa, lot of how can you say, very weird selections were happening.
Oh, look, there's no doubt. Look, the fact is, Australia, there was no hope for Langer going past May. That was decided last year, I reckon. Even though they won the World Cup, even though they won the Ashes, all that did was give him an opportunity to be extended until after the World Cup this year, which, you know what, was not a bad little extension considering he was going anyway. So he spat his dummy and he left. Look, Justin Langer is a good player, a servant of Australian cricket, but his coaching days were over. For Australia, he won't coach England either. That's going to happen. That would be too quick. So, in all fairness, Justin Langer would never have left the coaching role other than kicking and screaming. Let's be honest. They had an 8-hour meeting to discuss it. 8 hours. That must have been quite heated, don't you reckon?
Okay. Yeah, and in the evening there was the news that we are continuing discussions, and the next day morning there was new. Justin Langer said that I don't want to continue anymore. So
I think it was decided the night before. I think Justin Langer said, "I'm not putting up with this rubbish," and he wanted to speak to his management team, who then decided to. They released his resignation not through Cricket Australia.
then through you,
he resigned through his management team. The Cricket Australia didn't have a chance to even tell us. So,
Okay.
it was already announced by he himself, which was a bit, Anyway, Nick Hockley, who's the CEO, is a very good operator. Okay? I think highly of him. I think he's a good solution long-term for Australia. But Australia still have arrogance. Not in the CEO positions anymore, but they still have it in the players. When you're paying players tens of millions of dollars, they think their proverbial doesn't stink. And I'm talking specifically about Warner here and probably Smith. Okay? They both, and to a lesser extent, even Pat Cummins. Pat Cummins he knows that he's getting paid millions and he doesn't want to blow that. I'll tell you now. And he's captain of Australia. It's a big deal for him. But quite frankly, I think Pat Cummins is also an interim captain. I don't think he'll be long-term. As a bowler, it's very hard to imagine that being the case. Okay. But England's going to be interesting say, for example, Australia get Trevor Bayliss as the coach. He's and Andrew Mcdonald are likely to be fighting it out. And then in the case of England, their coach is Paul Collingwood, temporarily, interim. He probably will get the job anyway, but it's interesting. Okay, let's turn ourselves quickly to Australia-Pakistan. That's going to be an interesting series, don't you think?
When is it starting?
March.
Okay, so still more than 2 weeks to go.
Do India play test matches against the West Indies? They don't, do they?
No. I think it's only a ODI and a T20.
So when do India play test cricket again? Is it against Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, I believe?
Yes.
They're playing a day-nighter as well.
Correct.
Looks like Kolkata. So that's coming up.
And the IPL team has been announced, Ahmedabad Titans.
Yes, actually, you gave me that. I didn't post that yet. I'm going to post that. Everyone, to let you know that Bahram is a great source of breaking news and very helpful. He tells me things where he hears it. I'm just trying to find where it is. What do you think of the captain, though? Do you think, Hardik Pandya is not going to play Test cricket again, is he? So realistically, his future is IPL.
Yeah, looks like. I doubt he will be even playing for India in T20 or I don't know. He really has to perform. He has to really perform wonderful in the IPL to maybe get a spot back. But India need to be like Norman. If you ask me now, India need to be very fast in making changes, not make the mistake like what happened with Pujara and Rahane, and also certain members in the ODI squad where they are just dragging on. One is saying, okay, we are supporting the players, and yeah, but there should be a very clear-cut limit, 3-4 matches. That's it. You can't have them playing for 10-20 matches, and this is the international is not where you make them play to get them back in form. You go back to domestic, prove yourself, and come back. I would and it's not that India has any dearth of talent or dearth of players. Like if you say if you take the case of England, their test team, like they don't have people to behind to get them ahead. That's their reality. So they are just shuffling here and there and seeing maybe by luck or hope something works. But whereas with India, it's not the case. You have so many players knocking on the door continuously. And it's actually ruining the other players' careers also because of them dragging along with these players. Even on the bowler side, there are so many bowlers coming in. Doesn't make sense to drag along. I don't know. India's so much dragging along with Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. Why? He's completely out of form since last 2 years. And neither is he able to take wickets, neither he is able to stem the flow of runs. somehow in the last 2-3 seasons, I feel that the Indian bowlers, like what happened with South Africa, it's as if they forgot to even take wickets right from the T20 World Cup itself that went on.
But I mean, my concern is I think people have already forgotten about the defeat against South Africa in South Africa. India played in the end pretty poorly and really should have won that series.
I think the reason they forgot was because of lot of what people realize of the turmoil happening, or the politics happening between BCCI, the selection committee, and also the management and the team, the coaching staff, the captain, and the communication. So there was a lot of big turmoil over there. So, which I would say, like at the back of our hearts, we realized that 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 ugly thing happened, which in the end caused Virat to give away all the captaincy. And so let's hope now it's a new phase and it works out well. But at least I liked what Rohit Sharma said, that players need to be
Enjoy
creative and
themselves.
innovative with their work and deliver results. That's something very well he said, and I hope that's clearly followed and that continued. Even if you look at the the test match series, and like I was so shocked with forget Pant's batting is keeping also horrible. Every match he was like dropping one stumping or two stumpings and one or two catches. I don't know what's gone wrong. It's like as if he forgot even keeping. His basic skill of keeping has come. I would say would have been a big question mark. Forget his batting. Batting is next, but in keeping, even if he would have done the catches and the stumping, I said India could have won that Test series and could have even won one of the ODI games.
This is no name here. I concur with Burham. Drop bad performers after 3 chances, let them prove themselves in a domestic league and fight for the chance.
Yeah, India should be clear on that. You can't have a player with 3 bad performances and still you continue with them. Doesn't make sense.
Okay. The only thing I would say there is to drop players. If you have a 5-test series or something like that, 4-test series, you've got to give them the 4 tests.
I would say you need to give them 3 tests, Norman, not 4. If it's a 5-test series, in the first 3 tests they don't perform, they're out. You get new players in for the 4th and 5th test. Doesn't make sense continuing.
Param, I think that's a bit heavy. I think you've got to give players that are new some chance.
No, but given the situation, I don't think it's heavy, Norman. You see what happened. Like how many chances did if you ask me, Rane and Pujara, like for them the England home series was the last straw. Like that should have been the last straw. Not that after that they ended up playing 3 or 4 more series.
Well, the South African series was a big mistake. Those two shouldn't have gone there. That was the time to give Shreyas Iyer a free rein. It was the time to give a whole host of players a free rein. And are you concerned about Kohli? Forget the captaincy; that's gone.
I am highly concerned. He needs to. Well, I won't say that much because he's scoring a good 50s, 60s, 70s, and it has been consistent. Now it's only like we are expecting big hundreds from Kohli. That's what. But
he needs to score a century soon though, because he has had a long drought.
Correct.
And I think when he does break the shackles of a century, we'll probably see him go crazy. I reckon that could happen.
Even me, I reckon that also. But let's hope that century comes soon, not another 1 year or 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, he should. I think he probably needs to still clear his head from having the captaincy. I still think he needs to clear his head. Because if you watch I watched the dressing room players sitting there. And inevitably, Virat Kohli is sitting there and players are around him. And they're talking to him. Very much like you do around a captain. And let's be honest, even though he hasn't got a C after his name, he still would have his presence. Especially with younger players.
Yesterday, Norman, the team camaraderie was very good. Like, if you ask me, in the first 1 day against West Indies, like when they were on the field, when they were taking DRS, Like when Kohli came and said, Rohit immediately took. He did not. He trusted him completely, and there was a very nice, I would say, a team feeling within the team in the first ODI. And given the yesterday's match, that the umpiring was horrible. Like I think four DRS reviews India took, and they got it correct. It was like horrible. I think it's more like becoming a woke kind of thing, like having these local empires, and they don't want to show that. Uh, I don't say they don't want to show. They are becoming extra cautious in giving their decisions to make sure it does not show that they are biased towards the local team. This is really what's happening, which is actually not good.
Well, I have some good news. Just as an aside, we've got the IPL auction coming up in about or next weekend. In fact, I'm going to join Rev Sports, which is a new program that Boris Majunda's got with the extra time crew, and he's doing very well. He's obviously got. I'm joining them as a panelist. I'm pretty happy about that. So it'll give us a good exposure on that. And anyway, and I'm talking specifically about the Australian.
This will be on the channel, or this will be on YouTube?
Be on YouTube.
The channel.
No YouTube.
Okay.
No. But Rev Sports, it's a very it's new. It's only been around for about a month or so, but it's already gaining traction.
But it has its own like a channel like Star Sports or something like that, or it's only a YouTube?
It hasn't reached that point yet, but they have
Okay.
enormous backing from some very heavy hitting sponsors. So I'm pretty sure in the future it'll go to that level. Yes. Maybe not yet, but it will. So it's quite impressive. So I'm involved with that. Anyway, I think that realistically, it is amazing that we've just had a test series between Australia and England and Ashes, where Australia's won 4.9, as you describe it, to nil. But we've got the coach sacked.
Yeah, we already spoke about that one.
Sid, how are
Hey
you?
Norman, I'm good.
Hi, Sid. How are you?
Hi Vera, I'm
Okay.
good. Really good.
Welcome
Siddharth.
back to Eyes on Cricket.
I did come previously. It's I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
but
been over
it
2
has been
weeks.
a long break
Very
since
long time.
Norman came on.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think it's good. We can't be on every day. And I'm glad. Look,
no, there was an
Dave-
under 19 World Cup. Norman, you did not.
what?
You did not show that. Which India won a trophy. You know, like we were
Hang on a
dying to
minute.
see
I
a silver
covered
there.
it. I put up many community posts about the win. So I wasn't totally, but it's got to, I mean, it was a great World Cup, yes. But
We like
I
to
think
see
I
your
needed to
face. We
find a
like to
point
hear
where I
your
said that.
voice. That's more important.
I watched the whole match. It was great. It was great timing because it was in the West Indies, so you could watch it. I love Antigua. Oh, I love Antigua. Oh my God. One of my favorite places in the world to visit for cricket is Antigua. Richie Richardson, Curtly Ambrose. I've been blessed. I told you my experience there. I had a blessed time there. All right.
Norman said,
yes,
"I'll take a leave. I need to have my dinner." So
All
my
right,
wife
Brian,
is
you go.
calling me.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Brian.
take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Take care.
It's perfect. We've had David Graveney on for a while, who's, you know what, he's not telling me everything, but I think he's getting more involved because they haven't got a chairman of selectors. They've got no coach, or they've got a temporary coach. They've got a managing director that's gone. They've got an assistant coach. England have been gutted. Australia's been, you would argue, gutted. What's your take on that whole Justin Langer saga?
I mean, I'm looking at both sides. Okay, it's very perplexing. Was Langer really the hard taskmaster by which players just didn't get along with him? But if you have to look at just the results bit, I mean, it's like you won the Ashes, you won the World T20 for the first time. He helped you come out of the ball tampering scandal in a rather new light. Harsh treatment, if I have to look at from the results point of view, very harsh treatment. But I think the players just didn't get along with him. And I think Pat Cummins' statement really hit the nail on his coffin, I suppose. But there has long been a system where coaches have not gotten their due in Australia, if I had to look at it. John Buchanan is one prime example. Tim Nielsen, he also was dumped in the wake of the Argus review after Australia lost the Ashes. And Buchanan could have been sacked had it not been for Ricky Ponting's backing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Coaches are generally not dealt with pretty bad. They're pretty badly dealt in Australia for a very weird reason. I don't know why. I mean, it happened even in the case of Bob Simpson. Simpson had led Australia's charge, but suddenly Jeff Marsh took over in 1997 when there was no need to. I mean, Bob Simpson was doing such a brilliant job. And I think Australia is very lucky that they had someone like Bob Simpson because he oversaw a transition phase, gave Border the base of domination, and made Australia who they are, world beaters. I think the current status of Australia should be credited to Bob Simpson a lot more than other players or other coaches, if you look at it.
But Australian coaches, if you look back carefully, they've been behind the scenes type coaches. They have not been aggressive taskmasters. None of them have been. Lehman was very casual. Even John Buchanan was a bit school teacher like, but he wasn't that hard. Mickey Arthur didn't have a lot of luck with Shane Warne and the whole thing. Australian teams do not like a taskmaster as a coach. Okay? They don't. That's why I think Trevor Bayliss will be the next coach or Andrew Mcdonald, because they are that type of person. Trevor Bayliss, I think, is pretty close to being. I mean, unless Andrew Mcdonald does a great job, he's well liked. But I think
his results, if they don't go his way, then he's on his way out. Because look, Australia touring Pakistan.
But hang on. It can't be results. We've just won the World Cup. Ashley, you just said that. So it can't be results because otherwise Langer would have gotten more than 6 months.
Yeah.
So no, it's not necessarily results. It's because the reason why Andrew Mcdonald was really in charge of the World Cup and the Ashes.
Yes.
Okay? Even though Justin Langer was there appearing like he was, he really wasn't. I think that was already there. And Langer thought he got his nose clean and was able to get a long extension. But you know what? No one gets long extensions as coaches. So no matter what country you're in, you're on tenterhooks the whole time, aren't you? I mean, really. I mean,
I struggle to remember who had the longest coaching tenure apart from Simpson in the Australian team and Buchanan. Hardly any.
In the Australian makeup, well, I don't think there'd be too many that were very long at all. But look at the world scene of coaching. They're abysmal. England's changing coaches like there's no tomorrow. Chris Silver was, I feel sorry for Chris because I think he did a pretty good job.
India has had a rather stable coaching for the past 7 years,
yes.
if I had to look at it. But if you look at Shastri's tenure, see, again, before Shastri, the Kumble fiasco was really, really hurting India. It hurt Kohli. And I think that is what is coming to bite him back hard. He didn't want a very strict disciplinarian like Kumble. So out came Shastri, a yes man for him. I think there is a lot of anecdotes. If you have to look at Kumble and Langer, I think that's almost similar in the Indian and Australian setup.
I would agree with that.
But I am rather surprised that I thought Pat Cummins was a pretty genial guy who was not that aggressive off the field when it came to negotiations. But he's shown a very different face here. I'm very surprised with Cummins' reaction to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Or is it in Australian circles a New South Wales clique not getting along with the Western Australian? Maybe.
Oh, you know what? There is absolutely no doubt about that at all. You look at it. Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark, Warner, Smith. Right?
Nathan Lyon.
That's 6 players right there. Even Khawaja, although he's playing for Queensland, is a New South Welshman.
Yes.
Justin Langer just didn't like Khawaja. Okay? They did not get along. Khawaja should have. See, and you're right. Then there's that Tim Payne, who's Tasmanian, even Travis Head, who's South Australian, and Langer. They're a bit of a clique as well. So you are right. The New South Wales clique is very, very dominant. Hence why Pat Cummins was made captain, a New South Welshman. the influence of a man who we haven't spoken about named Neil Maxwell. Neil Maxwell, who I know very well because he's the chairman of the SCG11, is also managed Pat Cummins, Michael Hussey, Simon Kadich. I think he might have had something to do with Hazelwood, Brett Lee, blah, 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 blah. And he has had a lot of influence, I'll tell you now. He's also so interesting. Trevor Bayliss is a New South Wales player and coach.
But if Trevor Bayliss comes, end of Warner.
Oh
Simple.
God, that's going to be a huge problem. That's where I'm interested to see what happens, because if Bayliss does not get given the coaching job, it's because of Warner saying he doesn't want him. Right?
Yes.
I don't have any doubt about that. But if Trevor Bayliss gets the job, boy, oh boy, that's going to be interesting.
I know. It's like kind of a reverse Ganguly Chappell situation.
Yeah, it is.
Ganguly wanted Chappell, but when he came, Indian cricket was totally torn apart, unfortunately. Although Chappell, I must give credit where it's due. Chappell was instrumental in getting young blood in. Suresh Raina, Yuvraj Singh, all those guys came in and they had an extended run because Chappell emphasized on youth. The only problem is he couldn't get past Saurav Ganguly's ego and the ego of 1 million maddened fans in India. So that's his downfall. But I think Chappell did 51% good and 49% bad for India. I will put it in that balance. Nothing more than that. So Warner, I don't want Bayliss, but if I can mend the bridge with Bayliss, which looks highly unlikely, I doubt. I really doubt it.
You know, Greg Chappell can be quite a tough bugger. I'll tell you now.
He's a very tough bugger. Yeah.
I've had an experience with him. I don't mind talking about it. I'm going to talk about it. It's something I interviewed him for another TV station called TV Arcana up in Queensland. We actually flew to Queensland. I interviewed him, Adam Hollyoake, and Andy Bickle, all in the same session on Allan Border Field.
Yeah, Allan Border Field. Yeah.
And there was a certain price tag, which I won't mention the amount, for all three. Okay? In fact, Greg Chappell came up to me and said, I want to times that by 5. And I was a bit shocked. So he can be pretty tough. But we didn't agree to that, by
all
the way.
The Chappell brothers were tough. I mean, Ian, absolutely that mongrel instinct.
But, you know, it's interesting to talk about Ian Chappell, Greg Chappell, and even Steve Waugh, Mark Waugh. I know them all. I know all four of them. Steve Waugh is an absolutely amazingly decent man. Mark Waugh, I can't be that highly regarding. Ian and Greg Chappell. Ian is a remarkably loyal and decent man, not unlike Steve Waugh.
Yeah.
Greg has his moments, and there's no doubt that middle brother syndrome, would you argue Ian was a better player than Greg? Well, Ian was the first captain. There's certainly clashes or differences in Ian and Greg and Steve and Mark. Ian and Steve being the older, first
wiser,
captains, and Greg and Mark following. There's an element of that. I'll tell you what, it's surprisingly similar, the way that those two personality sets are there. And I've witnessed it firsthand. So I think I can tell you quite honestly, that's what I see.
I really don't know. I really, really don't know how Justin Langer will fit in the England setup. Who is the worthy candidate in England at this point in time? Strauss is not going to give full time to it because he's already the manager of cricket.
No, Andrew Strauss has come in as the kind of replacement for Giles.
Yeah, but he will not get into this hard coaching role. Who do you have in England? Maybe not any of the likes of Nasser Hussain, Mike Atherton, no one of those. You need a player. Where is that player?
Good question.
Justin Langer in England. Wow.
I actually think that Paul Collingwood, who's been made the interim coach, you'll probably find him staying for a lot longer. And in Australia's case, Mcdonald also staying for a lot longer. I think they're going to go with those two. They've been given interim coaching roles. Paul Collingwood's come from outside in, which is pretty significant. It's not. I don't think Paul Collingwood was the assistant coach, was he? He wasn't the assistant coach. So he's come from outside in. That's a pretty big move to even be interim. I think you'll find Paul Collingwood will probably stay for a while. And Andrew Mcdonald, well, he's ticked all the boxes, and Cricket Australia like him, and the players like him. So unless they bring in Trevor Bales, which we've discussed with the Warner issue, then we're going to see McDonald probably stay as well. But if you watch the video that I've got on my channel from Nick Hockley, he was very. Did you listen to that? Did you hear that?
I haven't. I haven't had
You
the
should
chance.
listen to that because he was very specific to projects. He calls a series a project.
Wow.
And he tells them he'll bring in certain people for certain projects.
Okay.
So he's really making it a certain structured.
This takes me back to Mickey Arthur's homework, the projects bit. Oh, God.
He's called them projects, which means from a CEO perspective, he sees the World Cup as a project. The next Ashes series, which is middle of next year in England, is a project, which means someone will fit into that project. And I'm guessing there'll be more than one coach announced, and Andrew McDonald will be certainly one of them. I think that, Trevor Bales is still there and Jason Gillespie is still there. Ricky Ponting made it really clear today or yesterday. He gave it to Cricket Australia. There's no way.
The name that you mentioned suddenly, why not Jason Gillespie for England? He had so much success for Yorkshire.
He was with South Australia and the Adelaide Strikers, whatever they call themselves. He also has a level 4 coaching qualification. Yes. One of only very, very, very few people in the world that have got level 4. Very few.
And we should be grateful that he helped Ishant Sharma regain his touch. It was Gillespie who told him, Paul Fuller, get your position right. Very, very shrewd tactical brain.
Yeah, he's a very good captain, and he's well liked as well. It's interesting because the coaching courses, level 1, 2, 3, and now 4. There's 2 places in the world that do it really well. That's Cricket New South Wales, not Cricket Australia, but Cricket New South Wales.
New South Wales.
And second would be, I think it's down in what's the name? What's the club? The club that
Hello, I think Norman's frozen. Frozen. Gone. I think Norman's net has given away. Uh-oh. Hello. Oops. I'm out. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. It's like a net outage. Thanks, Norman, for having me.
Okay, I'm back. And it looks as though we've lost Siddharth. Siddharth will probably get back in a second. Yeah, anyway, so Mahajal Warden has been mentioned by Niraj Solanki. Who for us? England or Australia? I'm not sure. I don't think he'll be coaching Australia. England, I don't think so either. Andy Flower's been floating around. Yes, he's another name that England might go. But I think England are going to go for Paul Collingwood, who's now the interim coach and will probably be the coach for longer than that. So anyway, that's the way it is. I'm just going to see whether Siddharth wants to come back on. All sorts of internet issues here. We may be close to finishing the broadcast as well, guys. But yeah, look, I don't think England are going to stray too far from their existing allotment of players, to be honest. I think, well, coaching that is. I think you're going to, Paul Collingwood probably will be the coach. Well, he is the coach in an interim fashion, and he'll probably be the coach for a lot longer than that. So that's, I'll just see what I can get a hold of Siddharth. Horrible connection here tonight. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. Anyway, it's one of those situations we never really know what goes on with broadcasts, and you tend to lose people on occasions on broadcasts. So anyway, it's all well and good. We'll have a situation soon where we'll have a lot more cricket on, so we might talk about it more then. So hi, Himanshu Rahela. So there's lots of decisions to be made. Australia clearly changed their mindset. They've got, well, Justin Langer has at least. He resigned, although he was given a very small contract to continue, he thought. So he left. Andrew Mcdonald will be there for the interim against, obviously, Sri Lanka coming up, and then of course, Pakistan. And then you've got a further development there with England playing against West Indies with Paul Collingwood as interim coach. So both strong, we'll say, and Andrew Strauss has stepped in for Ashley Giles. So there's been a few movements there, but yeah, there's been quite good. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us today. I'll be on regularly with David Gravy. So view, like, and share the post. Subscribe to Eyes on Cricket with Norman constantly. Go to both my LinkedIn and my Facebook pages, as well as my Twitter and my Instagram. So thanks, guys. We'll talk again soon.